Hello, hello. Welcome to Confidence with Coffee. I'm Heather Jean, and I'm so happy you're here. This is a segment on the Confidence Through Cabaret YouTube channel where we spend a little bit of time kind of reflecting on this week's podcast episode and the lessons from our guests. And in a lot of cases, the reflections that come up by me that I don't want to hijack the podcast over. I find it frustrating when a podcast host will say, "Oh, yeah, that's like this story and my story." And so this is that segment when I'm sharing questions, thoughts, comments, stories, or lessons from the podcast. And this week's podcast episode was with Robert Stewart, who is owner of Franchising Spot. So Dori went from being a high school teacher to starting a franchise to being in, let me just check here, 165 locations in 35 countries, and sold the business in 2020 as a multi-millionaire, and has just really kind of transitioned from being an engineering teacher and not having the business background to now helping others to either understand whether their business is franchisable, or whether what the ideal franchise would be if somebody wanted to have a franchise, or own a franchise from a franchisor. So we talked about a load of stuff on here. And I really, it's interesting when you listen to somebody's journey. And Dori and I have spoken before, so we know one another, but not well. But it was the first time I'd really been able to listen to the journey of Dori, and what she'd been through to get to where she is today. And it was really clear to me that Dori's business, which was starting off as, kind of an out of school club, and then going into, kind of summer clubs, and then going into something that became a franchise and spread. That when Dori sold it, with the things that she considered, before she sold it, to who she would sell it to, what she wanted for its future, and so on. It was almost like how we raise our children. We raise them, we nurture them, we look after them, we do all that we can, we learn lots of new stuff that we didn't know. It's how I learned all about cricket. Well, still don't know all about cricket, but I know something about cricket, being here in the UK and raising boys. But I think, then we let them go, right? And we know what we want for their future, but we don't ultimately control, or even really have any strong influence over some parts of our children's lives. And it's the same with our business. And so I wanted to spend a little bit of time thinking about, how do we know when it's time to build our business? And how do we know when it's time to transition or pivot our business? And how do we know when it's time to move on to something else? So let's have a listen. I asked Dori the question of what was the best lesson that she had learned that kept her going. And this was a kind of a new thought for her. So let's have a listen to what she says.
But I think what kept me going is knowing that I was building something that was impacting so many people. I mean, we're talking franchisees, their families, their staff, their families, and then all the children. I mean, we reached over 1 million students through this. And so, though I felt a great responsibility to all of those people, and that's what kept me going. Um, in terms of lessons, I mean, there were so many lessons along the way.
Ah, I love that. So, just kept knowing that she was building something that was important to so many people. And I think if you are building a business that is not important to people, directly or indirectly, then you probably need to go back and check, why is that business necessary? And therefore, why will that business succeed? But for the most part, most of you will know why that business is important, and why others need your business, because that's how they're your customers, right? Or your clients, or whatever you'd like to refer to them as. Um, and whether you have a full-time job, or whether you are um, as in employed, or whether you have your own business, or maybe some of you have both with a a side hustle and a job as well. You should be able to connect with your customers in terms of how what you are doing is impacting and improving your customers' life. So when I go into businesses, usually major corporations, so, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people globally in some of these businesses, a lot of times the person in the back office will say, I don't have any connection with the customer. Like what I do does not impact the customer, nor does the customer recognize if I don't do what I do, they wouldn't be impacted or notice. And I'm calling BS on that, man, because if what you're doing, let's say you're an HR person, right? So you're not customer facing, you're not connecting with your external customers, but you are, because you're enabling others who ultimately connect with the external customers. In other words, you are supplying a service, or you're supplying something to the business that enables other people to do their job, which enables until it reaches the external customer. And so it's always worth, if you have a full-time job, it's always worth checking into, how does what you do impact the success and growth of the business? Because that is a great motivator and is a fantastic way of getting some momentum going and having confidence that what you're doing is important. If you have a business, you'll probably see that more clearly or directly. And again, even if you're a business to business, you're connecting with a business that is connecting. Eventually, somebody's connecting with a consumer. And so, if you're not directly connected with a consumer, maybe you're supplying, I don't know, social media services for somebody who has a business, and it's their customers. You will be able to see that. And I love the way Dori explains, the franchisees have employees, they have their own families, they have employees who have families, and customers have families, and so on. So she's impacting an awful lot of people, most especially the end consumer being a child, and or family. So uh, I I wanted to talk a little bit on this segment, in as we have our coffee, about how do you know when it's time to move on, or how are you connecting with what's keeping you going. And sometimes it can feel like it's flogging a dead horse, and sometimes it is. So, just before we go into my observations, if you haven't heard the podcast, you can check it out anywhere you get your audio podcasts. Just search Confidence Through Cabaret. Please like and subscribe while you're there. And then, if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, Confidence Through Cabaret, you'll be on the Confidence with Coffee segment or playlist. If you hop on over to the Vodcast, that is a video podcast, then you will find that the conversation with Dori and I in video form. Again, please like and subscribe to the channel and to that video. So I have had several businesses. I started my first business 26 years ago this year, which is a corporate leadership training consultancy with career and confidence visibility coaching. So that means that I go into a business, I help them establish what kind of training they require, what kind of intervention, help them design it, and either I help them pilot it and then leave it, or I run it for them. That's in a nutshell. The coaching side of it comes off of those programs, very often have a coaching element built into it so that they have some reflection time, particularly as I'm using profiling tools a lot of the time. And then they are able to go and reflect and try things out. And then we have coaching built into the program. And I also offer executive coaching for a huge amount of my clients. So I have loved that work. I left my job in the airlines, which I adored. And the reason that I left was I was head of training for a major international airline. I was doing the same thing over and over, and I was on a hamster wheel and I wasn't gaining anything new. I was going to new places, I was enjoying things, I was having new experiences, always something new, but I wasn't being challenged, and I could see that that was the way that the career was going to go if I continued to stay there. So I left. And kind of by accident, I started my first business, attitudes training, where I developed a couple of big clients, which is Orange Telecoms, which was owned by Hutchison Whampoa at the time, pre-flotation. And so that grew very, very quickly. And the other was Disney. And I had both of those clients. And then from there, other clients came, word of mouth. This is before the internet. And so it spread. And and I loved it, and I never thought that I would ever want to leave it, and I sort of don't. I always wanna have one foot into that space. In 2019, when my late husband passed away and left me in a huge amount of debt, and I had to move house and all kinds of, difficulty. I was in a car accident, neck and back injuries and all kinds of difficulties. I was just getting back into a strong physical and mental state at the beginning of 2020. And worked for about 6 weeks and then COVID. And we all know what happened then. Now, there were two things I couldn't do that my job relied on, which was traveling and running large conferences. So, somewhat it was available online. It isn't really what I do because what I do is much more experiential. And so decided in the meantime to start a business to consumer rather than my business to business, established business. I have also had other businesses during these 26 years. I had a business which was called Healthy Attitudes. I still have it technically, although again, I'm not doing anything with it because it was working with schools or school-aged children outside of school, both of those, around peer mentoring and around self-esteem, confidence, and healthy choices. And in that business, I worked with parents to help them understand how to support their children in making healthy choices and so on. And I loved that. I would have done that full time if I absolutely could have. But it was more of a passion and a giving back to my community. And I wanted to keep it that way rather than build it into a large business. So I had those two businesses, and then 2020 came. And in 2020, I decided to I didn't actually decide to start a business, but I did start a business, which is really a business to consumer business of I'm a business, then my clients are end of line or front line of their own business, or, as in they've got a small business, or are starting a small business, or are transitioning in their business. But they tend to be small businesses instead of large corporations. I also work with consumers who don't have a business at all, who want to build confidence in their personal life as opposed to building confidence in their work life. We use the analogy of cabaret, and we talk about owning our space unapologetically, and we talk about, really raising our voice and sharing our messages and really overcoming any unhealthy programming that is no longer serving us, in a nutshell. So I help women to build unshakable confidence is the bottom line. I help women to not shrink in their space. I help women to really own who they are, to be in touch with it, to connect with their inner knowing, and to be able to express that unapologetically. So when I got involved in that, I found it very difficult because if you wanted to find any of your own flaws in your beliefs, programming that is limiting, if you want to find any of the feelings that you haven't felt yet that are uncomfortable, that you've been hiding from, then start your own business, especially an online business where you need to show up as in a stage life. You need to have a presence, visibility. So I enjoyed doing it. Cabaret is a love and a passion and a hobby of mine. And I really enjoyed doing it, but I always expected I would go back to corporate. And in the time between 2020 and the end of 2021, I found that I had so many different views and beliefs and understandings and learnings from, things like feminine and masculine energy. I'd always talked about Carl Jung energies, about, introversion, extroversion, thinking and feeling. But now here I was talking about feminine and masculine energy and intuition and creativity and all of the things I had never allowed myself to experience. And of course, now I have experienced those. I've become very comfortable in those. I run programs in those, but I I'm I'm not sure how I go back into the corporate world where it is much more around masculine energy. In other words, results, drive, doing, competing, actually, achieving measurable things. And so this is a question going back to the original one, around how do you know when it's the end of your business? And I suspect that I will need to make a choice between those two businesses. My criteria for making those choices is really what is most aligned with me in my values, my personal values, as well as my business values, which of course are aligned because I designed them that way. Um, where do I feel the most passionate? Where do I feel the most connected? And where am I able to make a living? Yes, that has to come into it in terms of criteria. If you are at a crossroads and you're trying to decide, then I would sit down. We have a masterclass on confidencethroughcabaret.com all about establishing and understanding what your values actually are so that you can align with them. Because I always used to struggle with them. I understand aligning with values, but how do I know where they come from? Because nobody told me my values yet. And again, from the corporate world, you're told your values. Here's the company values. So, um, so, so know your values, connect with your inner knowing and your intuition and your creativity and your passion, and see what is serving you and what you want to do with that. And this isn't for life, right? This is just for now. This is your next step. And if you're already thinking, but how would I do that, and how would I, if I find my passion, then how would I do it? Forget the how and forget the forever. Just find your passion, find your alignment, find your inner knowing, and then check where your boundaries are. So, what kind of work would it take to develop the kind of clients that you need, to develop the kind of money that you need in order to continue to do business? Like, forget the dreams of the millions that are promised and the 10K months that come after 2 months and all of that. It's very few and far between that happens to. And what do you need to do in order to make the money that you need to make? Now, if you go back to this podcast episode with Dori and I, Dori is talking a lot about what do you want to be doing with your time and being really clear. And she gives some really great guidance there around, if you're going to buy this franchise, you're not going to be doing it. The business is about that. Your role would not be doing that. So do go check out the podcast because there's some wonderful guidance in there. I always love hearing from you. So if this has stirred up anything, like sometimes these things raise more questions than answers, then I would love to hear from you. Either you can comment here, you can reach me as Heather Jean or as Confidence Through Cabaret on all of the socials. I love having you here. Please do like and subscribe and check back with us. We're up here every Wednesday. I'm out here doing content, live content, as well as recorded content for the Vodcast and Confidence with Coffee. Join us in the Confidence Through Cabaret community on Facebook. We're on all of the socials as Confidence Through Cabaret, except for Twitter, where we are at YBYWYS. Please do reach out to us on any one of those social media forms, and I will help you. We can jump onto a call. We can you can join one of my free live masterclasses. I've always got things going around self-love and self-confidence and feeling good in our body and self-acceptance. I've got all kinds of things planned for 2022, but I'm always happy to jump onto a call, and we can, clarify some of the questions that might have come up around knowing your values, or around what your courage, what your passion is, and and really trying to help you make those business decisions. So Confidence Through Cabaret, all the socials except for Twitter, which is at YBYWYS. I am also at Heather YBYWYS on Clubhouse. So hopefully I will see you in one of those places. I just want to remind you what those 6 little letters YBYWYS stand for, and they are all about it is your body. And it is your world, and it's your stage. Take up space, own it. Bye for now.